President Cyril Ramaphosa says this week's looting in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal was used as a smokescreen to carry out economic sabotage. Trucks transporting food and other essentials were targeted. Factories and critical infrastructure were also not spared. Ramaphosa says this was part of an attempt to dislodge South Africa's democracy. The president of the African People's Convention, Themba Godi, joins us to give his reaction to the president's speech tonight. Mr. Godi, good evening, and thank you so much for your time tonight. The president admitting last night that they were ill-prepared to deal with this orchestrated act of destruction. And we then look at government's response throughout the course of the week. There have been some that have said that they responded appropriately, while others have said that they've been found wanting. What's your assessment?
Well, thanks very much for having me. In the first instance, the disturbances that we've had were predictable and could have been stopped, except that government was ill-prepared. I think the president has acknowledged that. So there can therefore be no one who claims otherwise. And the unfolding events have actually confirmed that government was merely reactive. Put aside the question of the intelligence that they should have had, the fact that what triggered these disturbances were the incarceration of the former president, Jacob Zuma. And yet it has been clear that his incarceration was going to lead to some sort or level of social unrest or civil unrest. How government then was caught napping can only be attributed, in my view, to a faction in the ANC blinded by their sense of triumphalism that finally JZ was going to prison and all was going to be well.
And that was going to be my next question, to say just how much do you think, the factions within the ANC caused the party to be blinded to what was happening on the ground?
Yeah, look, I think what we're going through has its genesis in the intent. Within the ANC, and I think that the intensification of the factional contradictions have led to people living in government to look at matters of state through factional lenses. I don't accept that there was no information from the intelligence community, let alone the fact that publicly over and over again these threats were made, but somehow government was not in a position to forestall this.
And the president has spoken about an apparent mobilization of communities in this particular fight, as he describes it. How much of this would you say is taking place at the moment?
Look, fact of the matter is the trigger was the incarceration of the former president. But clearly, after a day or two, this moved into something way, way, way beyond the incarceration of President Jacob Zuma. And and like you have reported about it, and even a lot of international media, the fact that the issues around poverty, inequality, and unemployment came very much to the fore cannot be ignored. And I think that this is the elephant in the room that everybody is trying to avoid. And yet it is the reality that any leadership must face up to.
And when we then see, some of the visuals that we were able to capture during the week, you would have seen that it appears as if police were really either not up to the task or were overpowered by those who were conducting such acts of looting. Do you think then it was wise of government to deploy the SANDF? Because others have said that this was a signal then of a policing entity that is not able to protect its citizens and thus looked to the SANDF to carry out this task.
No, well, I have a different view, which is that the sending in of the army, it's very much a panic reaction because you can see even the characterization of these incidences as a coup attempt, as an insurrection. I think it's very much a panic reaction than, an objective one. And I don't think that the police would be unable to manage the situation. Remember, there is a conflict between the national commissioner and the minister. The minister wants the police commissioner out a long time ago. And I believe that it is this lack of synergy between and within the leadership of the SAPS that would have caused this. I don't think that, because look, you were not dealing with people who were confronting the authorities and fighting the authorities. We were confronted by people who were going to malls, who were going to shopping centers, who were going to factories here and there. And it was clear that beyond the initial blockading of the N2 and the N3, people were looking for food and things of value that they could exchange to get food. I don't think that you had fewer policemen and traffic cops in the major cities to manage the situation. For me, it had everything to do with the contradictions you have in the leadership, but bringing the army, it's more, your typical apartheid reaction where you want to show force. Like I said, the elephant in the room cannot be resolved by sending in the army or even the police, because long after they've gone, you're going to have the situation playing itself again in a few years down the line.
And when you then look at government's response to what is happening in Phoenix, was that sufficient?
No, not at all. I think, look, we have to appreciate the fact that since 1955, the orientation of the ANC has always been to present the cup of what they call non-racialism for the Africans to drink. Beyond that, there is always, a walking on eggs kind of situation. The situation in Phoenix is very bad, and it does need to be addressed fully and thoroughly, because if it was the other way around, I can bet you that a lot of your spiritual leaders will be there presenting sermons, and a lot of other things. I think that it has been handled very, very cautiously without really being as emphatic. I mean, the president yesterday even accused the instigators of trying to stoke the fires of racism, and never did he mention the word Phoenix. We see the Minister of Police today is having meetings around there, well, which I felt was much better, because it allowed communities to speak and offered a way out in terms of what it is that government will do. But that must also be laid at the doorsteps of the government, because you recall that in the earlier times, there was a call for private security companies and everybody else, basically vigilantism. And that is where, in communities like Phoenix, you then had this kind of situation.
We really, heard from some of those who were speaking to in reaction to the president's speech yesterday, who were saying that in a normal situation, you would have seen either members of the security cluster being asked to step aside while an investigation into this particular unrest continues. Others even didn't mince their words, going as far as saying they should have been shown the door. Do you agree with that?
Well, you say under normal circumstances, that is normal, because the ANC is tearing itself apart. And so whatever decision the president takes, there are always factional considerations. Clearly, there are so many things that have gone wrong, for which not only now, I mean, remember, the chaos we're having has its roots in the fact that our people have been betrayed, they have been lied to by their leaders. Their leaders have stolen from the people and left them destitute. I think there is no greater crime than that, for which people should hang their heads in shame, that we have made promises that we have not fulfilled, which has led us to where we are. And the fact that in reaction to this situation, all that everybody has done has been merely to criminalize it, and in that way justify whatever action they are to take. So when you look at should ministers be shown the door, I think if there was any inkling to do that, we should have done it on much, much bigger wrongs that have happened to our people than this. I don't think that is going to happen.
And do you think then, as you know, government tries to piece together what should happen next, let's then look to the other side here, if I can use that. What should then be the messaging from some of those that are supporting the former president? You would have seen some of them on various platforms when they were requested to either call for calm or condemn some of what we were seeing. There was really a reluctance in some sectors, you know, to really quell or even call for calm. What responsibility lies there?
Look, I think we might be looking at the not so critical side. Even if people had said, let there be calm, which all leaders should do, and there is calm, then what? Because I believe that the most urgent thing for us to do, I believe all those people were arrested with a bag of mealie meal, with some tin stuff, with fish oil. Surely those people must be given amnesty, and the focus be on, since this is the biggest uprising we've had since 1994, what message is it sending to us? It is saying people have been failed. What do we do? If all we're going to do is to send in the army, restore the calm, and continue as if nothing has happened as before, we'll then have failed our people, have failed our country, because the elephant in the room remains the inequality, the poverty, and the unemployment that persists because the economy has not been transformed. The rich have become richer, the poor have become poorer. And to expect that they must endure their poverty in peace, it is to live in dreamland, because it's not possible. It is going to happen this way from time to time. A few people will be killed, some will be arrested, it's back to normal. But the poor, betrayed, misled, beaten back, remains the bedrock in driving the kind of change that we need, so that we can say freedom indeed has a material meaning to our people.
What becomes the role of Parliament during a time like this?
Well, look, times like this should not happen when Parliament is there, in the sense that departments go to Parliament with their plans, what they call predetermined objectives. That is to say, this is what we're going to do for the year, and this is the budget. But come the end of the year, the money is embezzled, there is no accountability, and so the conditions of the people remain where they are. Parliament would mean, I'm in a group of former MPs, and my heart broke to see how former MPs laugh and revel at the dehumanization of poor people who have been caught, you know, with some foodstuffs. So the orientation, the thinking is just not there. I would expect that instead of calling Parliament to come and debate, the various portfolio committees responsible for either the police or local government or housing or social development should go to these areas and find out for themselves what the money that they are appropriating every year is doing. What impact does it have? If it has none, why? So that we can change policies, we can change course, because it's now almost 30 years down the line. And what do we have? Persisting poverty.
It sounds like a lot needs to be done still. Mr. Godi, if anything that you say is to go by tonight, thank you so much for your time. We certainly do appreciate it. That was Themba Godi, President of the African People's Convention. In just a